Welcome to this Blender modelling video. Today I'm going to be modelling a Roman Gladius short sword. This is not a full step-by-step tutorial, it's more of a walkthrough. However, I will have my key presses displayed in the bottom left hand corner, and I will be explaining as I go along why I'm doing certain things. So let's begin. I'm going to start with the blade. So I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to rotate on the y-axis by 45 degrees to get the diamond cross section of the sword. I'm just going to move the reference image back a little bit, and I can't scale it this way because it's going to scale it incorrectly along the axis. So I'm just going to go to the front view, go to Z, go to wireframe. While I edit poly, I'm going to scale on the x-axis to get the cross section of the blade, just like that. That's pretty good to me. So I'm going to go back into object mode, scale down, just move that to the end. Just going to size it to generally fit it. Won't be 100%, maybe a little bit bigger, but I am going to bevel the edge. Tab and GY to that end. Now, on a couple of occasions I've messed this blade up in the past because I've forgotten a couple of things, or to do a couple of things while I was modelling, so I'm not going to forget this time. First I'm going to delete that bottom face and the faces behind it, like so. Get rid of that face, get rid of the end one, and I'm going to bevel that top edge to get the cutting edge of the blade. Go to front view, Control B, bring that out a little bit like that. Let's have a look at that from the side. Oh, there we go. You can see that's taking quite a bit of material off of the blade, but that's okay. I'm going to add that back in later on. And I thicken everything up a little bit. I'm going to rescale it. I'm going to do that after I've done the next bit. So what I'm going to do is, going to get rid of this backwards edge now. Get rid of you, and get rid of you, delete, go to a side view, pull this up to the top like so, and I'm going to make a cut now. Get a knife tool, I'm going to cut from here to here. And what that'll do is make sure that this doesn't taper too much in the next stage. Right, so I'm going to grab this here, extrude to the end, get along, just going to line up those two ends together, grab this part here, G to move, I'm just going to bring it out like so for the tip of the blade. I'm also going to move this one slightly like that and put it on like a 45-degree angle to show the chamfer of the blade. So when you cut blade, when those 2 points meet, they're not going to meet directly on the side, they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. So this needs to come out just a tiny bit more, just to make it a little bit thicker. Make sure it's the same thickness as this, or around the same thickness, like so. So now that should be in the center, so all I need to do is take this point here and move that across like so. I'm going to use a front view for that to make sure it all lines up correctly. Move that across just to meet it in the middle, and I'm going to make sure that this is all flat by going scale Z 0, enter, and then merge by distance. I'm going to increase the distance, make sure those two are merged. So now I should have 1/4 of a blade. So I'm going to go back into solid mode. I'm going to use Control A and reset all transforms to make sure it understands that this is where the model is now, and it is no longer a cube that's been rotated. I go to the side view, and I'm going to move the cursor using the 3D cursor. I'm going to move the central pivot. Origin, there we go. I'm going to go to add modifier. I'm going to go to a mirror that on the Z axis to get the rest of the blade. As we can see now, it's not quite lining up correctly, but this image that's been taken here isn't exactly a 2D view. It's a 3D object that's had a photograph taken, so it's not going to be exactly front on. So just looking at that, looks pretty good, but we do have some overlapping here. So I'm just going to increase my merge limit, and that has fixed the problem. There we go, just going to apply that. Now I'm going to go to a top view, move the 3D cursor, set origin 3D cursor, and mirror again. There we go. And these aren't quite meeting correctly, so just to increase my merge limit, and that has fixed the problem. There we go. Click apply. There is our blade. So on to the next part. I'm going to move swiftly on, and I'm going to start on this handguard. So as we can see from this handguard, it's kind of it's not quite a sphere, but it's not also quite a cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sphere. I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. So I've got the ends pointing this way. I'm going to move that to here, shrink that down, like so, go into wireframe, and I'm going to cut it in half. Like so. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale and move it until it fits the object more closely. So scale, oh that's very close already. G, yeah, I would say that's lined up reasonably well with the object. So I'm going to use edge mode, alt select the front, extrude on the Y, all the way to the end, like that. And I'm also going to put this in here where the metal meets the wood. So Control R, put a line in there, and I'm also going to Control B to bring that out just a little bit where those two meet, so I can put a groove in later. Okay, so let's look at that from the front. That is clearly a little bit too circular for the Roman sword. So I'm going to go into object mode. I'm going to scale it on the x-axis. I'm going to scale it to about there. What I'm going to do later on is use that handle there as a reference to see how thick this should be, because a cylinder like this handle will have the same diameter, the same thickness this way as it does across the top, because it is cylindrical and therefore it has a consistent diameter. So now I'm going to fill this end in with Alt There we go. Alt select the end, F to select the end part, and cap it. So I'm quite happy with that so far. So I'm going to move swiftly onto the handle. This I'm going to do in sections. Because this is a repeating pattern, I can just make one section and duplicate it across. So I'm going to start off with adding a cylinder, like so. I'm going to rotate on the X by 90 degrees, G, S, G. So I'm going to take a little bit more time on this because I'm only going to have to do it once. There is a little bit of extra material on this piece here, but we can add that separately. So I'm going to go into wireframe, scale it up to fit the size of the handle, like so. Edit. Now we've got a little bit more control. Pull that halfway there, and just to there, like so. Control R in the middle, scale down, like that. Control R, scale down, Control R, scale down. So I've got this quite interesting shape here. Yep, looking good. I might play around with that shape later on, but that's going to be my basic shape. Now I'm going to go into edit mode, Control A, Shift D, G, X. Oh, it's not letting me move it because I'm moving on the wrong axis. It was GY. It's my error there. Don't line those up. Quite generally, Shift D, GY, GY. There we go. Pressing all the wrong buttons today. So they don't quite meet exactly. So I might have to rescale the whole thing in a second, just to stretch it so it will fit. Shift D, G, Y, G, Y. There we go. So it doesn't quite fit. It's only a little bit off though, so I can click A, move it down a little bit, like that. Scale X, scale Y, sorry. There we go. So now it's meeting each one correctly. There we go. M, merge by distance, and that's just going to merge all of these connecting points together. That's why I did this in edit mode and not object mode, so I didn't have to join them. So now they're all merged. I'm going to select these points here with Alt. Oh, apparently that's not merged correctly. Let's have a look. Solid mode. Yep, that's not merged. So, oh, Tab A. There's a mistake I've made. I have joined these two together. So, to fix that, I'm just going to click 1 L P by selection, and that separates it from the rest of the model. There we go. That would separate that. So now I'm going to go to vertices A, merge by distance again. Just increase the distance slightly. And it says that it is merged. This is because I did not remember to delete these ends. So this is now full of end pieces. Not too much of a problem. There we go. Easy fix. It's always good to problem solve these kind of things as they do come up from time to time. Gonna go back into vertex A, and then I'm going to merge by distance. There we go. It says it's nothing's removed, but we will just check that out. There we go. Now we can select that end. Gonna hold Shift and Alt to select all three. Go into front view, wireframe, Control B, bring these out, and just want to give them a bit of a chamfer, just like on the model. Oh, on the reference, sorry. There we go. Yeah, that's looking pretty close from what I can tell. Have a look from a solid view. Yeah, that's looking reasonably like the model. Good way to tell now is just to go to Tab A, by Face, Shade Smooth. There we go. We can see that is reasonably similar to the reference that it's based on. So next thing I'm going to do is do those end pieces. So they're not too difficult. What they were is basically just extrusions of the end. I will be chamfering those and beveling those later on as well, just to make them fit just that tiny bit better. Oops, there we go. So moving on to the pummel now, I'm going to take another sphere because it's very spherical in shape. I'm going to rotate around the x-axis again, scale that down. It's not quite a sphere, it's a bit like a squished potato. Bit of a strange thing to say, however that is kind of what it looks like. The pummel is central to this handle here, however because of the reference it's not exact, so we're going to move those into place at a later time. I'm just going to scale this and get it to a general shape like so. It's good, however from the top you can see that's way too wide to be a pummel. So I'm just going to scale that on the x-axis to about there, just so it looks like it all fits together quite nicely. So that is the pummel. Again, I'm going to smooth that with Shade Smooth. Might as well do it to the blade, the hand guard as well. Shade Smooth. It's going to have a weird thing happening to the end of this. That's something we're going to deal with later on. There we go. That's the start of that. And the last thing is to do the pin that goes in the end. So another very simple shape. It's just another cylinder. So add a cylinder. Rotation on the X by 90. Scale and move. Oh, almost the right size. Very close. There we go. So what I want to do now is just get that to the right size. Like so. And then I'm going to Control B, bevel that end. Just going to round it just a little bit like that. Yeah, also delete this inside face as we won't be able to see that ever, and it's just an extra poly, in this case an N-gon, that we don't need. There we go. And let's smooth that as well, the face smooth, so I can get a better idea of what that looks like. So that is the start of our sword. The next thing we're going to be working on is giving that blade a much nicer taper towards the end. and start adding the finer details on the rest of the sword. But before we do that, I'm going to make sure that everything is central down the x-axis. So I'm going to click each object, go into its properties, and on the x-axis we see it 0.0007. I'm just going to change that 0 for everything. 0, 0, and 0. Finally, 0. So we saw they were all slightly different, and just by centering it, we know that entire thing has one central axis. So, thank you for watching the part 1 of this video. In part 2, we're going to be doing that detailing, and then we're going to start unwrapping the model. Thank you for listening.